Am I the a-hole for not supporting girlfriend's sister? Original post. Some info. I have been with my girlfriend, 27 female, for 5 years. She loves her sister a ton, which is a good thing as I believe supporting and helping your siblings, as long as it doesn't ruin your own life. You will understand why I say this later on. We just put down a mortgage on a house in the suburbs of a large city. I, 28 male, work in tech as a software developer with a master's degree in computer science. I make quite a lot of money, so money issues never arose, while girlfriend doesn't work and do the chores/cooking in the house. Both agreed on this. I was gonna propose to girlfriend next year, but a problem arose about 2 years ago. For the last 2 years, probably longer, girlfriend has been sending money to her younger sister we'll call Emily. Emily got pregnant at 20 years old. She works as a waitress, while the father is bouncing from job to job. Emily says that he is very lazy. He will disappear hours at a time without telling Emily where he's going or what he's doing. Emily has asked my girlfriend on several occasions for money, and my girlfriend, being the nice and sweet person she is, says yes all the time. It started off as paying for diapers, no problem. Then baby clothes, which also no problem. Then daycare, which I just brushed off. I talked with girlfriend saying we can't always pay for everything, and that helping out for a couple things is okay, but not everything. Girlfriend reassured me and said that it would be stopping soon once they get their feet picked up, which is fine. Then one day I hired a financial planner, and the next day I get an email saying my account has sent approximately $50,000 for the last 10 months and have now just around $20,000 sitting in my account. I talked with my girlfriend, and she apologizes and says she knew that I wouldn't want to keep sending her sister money and how she just cares about her sister. We've been paying for everything: insurance, rent, car payment, daycare, clothing for all three, dinners, dates, going out expenses, and it is partly my fault because I never checked my bank account. My girlfriend shows me text messages between her and Emily saying she needs the money, and then noticed a pattern where Emily would say, "Hey, can you send me dollars? I don't have money for blank." And of course, girlfriend says yes. I brush it off, and girlfriend says she won't send any more. Then the next day, girlfriend sends her $1,000 because they needed car repairs. I talk with my girlfriend and we get into an argument where she says she will always help her sister no matter what. And I understand, to an extent. And we argue trying to understand each other's point of view. As stated, before we had $20,000 and now we're down to $19,000. And then how about the next time? And the next time after that, on top of our own expenses. Girlfriend then decided that she needs some time alone and that she will be at her mother's for the time being. And now I'm all alone in the house I thought I would live with the girl of my dreams. Am I the a-hole for arguing with my girlfriend for caring about her sister too much? Now for the top comments/advice before reading the updates. Info: how does your girlfriend have access to your account? We share the same account. Decided it'd be best as she went to buy groceries, house items, etc. Cut her off. I'd also rethink the relationship, to be honest. She basically stole from you. Not the a-hole. Separate your bank accounts. Do not let her use your money for her sister. That sister is gonna be a leech for your entire life. So yes, obviously Emily comes packaged with your girlfriend. Better reconsider your entire relationship, because I have a feeling that Emily ain't gonna let the golden goose go. I hope the house isn't under joint names, and that you can finance the mortgage on your own. Time to look at the big picture. Financial planning. Money comes in, money is used for X, Y, and Z. Some fun money, some savings. Your girlfriend can send as much money as she wants to her sister, as long as it comes from her fun money. She doesn't get to raid your savings. If you cannot trust her, you also don't want to marry her. Not the a-hole. Just pointing out that $5,000 a month is a pretty good salary, given she's likely not going to report it as income, and it is on top of whatever her sister earns. Sister's living the good life. Yes, if she wants to keep the relationship going, this is a good strategy. Though I don't know how I could ever trust someone that would spend $50K, agree not to do it again without talking to me, then the next day send $1,000 behind my back. At this point, she and her sister may be splitting the money for when Opie and her break up, as 99.99% of people would never do this if they wanted their relationship to last. Even if that's not happening, to go to her mom's like that is some sort of power play like she has been wronged. It's just so messed up. That is a massive red flag. If she's taking liberties with money in your joint account to fund the lives of 3 people now, don't you think this will continue in the future? $50,000 is a lot of money. She lied when she said she would stop and then leaves when you call her out on it. Please do yourself a favor and change the locks. Terminate access to your account and get a new girlfriend. You are her cash cow, and she's taking advantage of you. Totally agree. $50K is definitely a lot of money. It's more than some people make annually. She's literally paying them a salary at the liberty of depleting OP's savings. And if your girlfriend's sister cannot get back on her feet on $5K a month, she's not going to get back on her feet. And what about when her parents retire? It's clear that she feels entitled to funding her family's lifestyle so they can live beyond their means. Unlimited access to your bank account before marriage is wild to me, even if she's doing work in the home. I can appreciate your generosity, but again, you are not responsible for funding her sister's family's lifestyle. And imagine how much more entitled she would feel once you were married. You could tell your girlfriend that if she wants to support her sister, she can get a part-time job and send her the whole paycheck. I think part of the issue could be that she's not understanding the value of the money and could be out of touch after not working for a couple years. Perhaps she would feel differently once she realizes how much work it takes to make that money, even though she'd obviously be making less per hour than you. Not stay whole. Now for the updates. Thank you everyone for the support. I never thought that my situation would blow up to thousands of people. I'll try to answer some questions at best. I make around $150,000 a year as a lead software developer. And as someone who has no kids, dogs, or any major responsibility besides myself and a girlfriend, I never checked my account. She comes from a culture where family is everything and money is just paper. She texted me earlier saying how it should always be family first, and that money doesn't mean anything without family, and how we should help close family like siblings in their time of need. At this point, I told her I needed time to myself, and told her not to come back until I'm ready to talk. I apologize if my sentences aren't making sense, as Whiskey is my only friend right now. I also forgot to mention, we started dating before all this money came into play, so I trusted her. I'm more sad by the betrayal than the money. Money will come back, but time will never come back. 5 whole years. My proposal plan, my life plan, my future kids I dreamt about with her, just gone. All the things we've said to each other, all the late night wine drunk times we spent, all the dates, all the flowers I gave her. I really tried with all my power to be the best man she can have. I would have trusted her with my life. And what do I get back? $5,000 gone. Final update 2 weeks later. She is now my ex. We met at a local coffee shop and I told her that things wouldn't work out for us. And she went absolutely ballistic. She caused a scene begging me to not end it. It did hurt me to see her like this, but after a couple weeks to give it some thought, I would not want a wife who is a liar and one I couldn't trust financially. I left a $100 bill on the table and left, but she followed me down to my car. She begged and told me she wouldn't send any more money to her sister and how she would do anything for us to be together. It was hard, but I stayed strong. She picked up her belongings the other day and I almost had to call the cops because she wouldn't leave. She first tried everything, from simple favors, begging, crying, then it turned to screaming that I ruined her life, to even saying that without her I wouldn't have gotten to where I am now because of her support. I stayed strong, and when she left, I just broke down sobbing. For those wondering, I'm not gonna press charges because all I want is for her to leave me alone. I don't want anything to do with her. I don't ever want to see her face again. The money will come back as it's just me, a house, and 2 paid-off cars. It does get lonely, so I'm thinking of getting a puppy, a Doberman for those wondering. Thank you everyone for all the suggestions, and a lot of you really had me thinking about my decisions, and I definitely learned a lot of valuable lessons. Goodbye and thank you. Diapers, sure, maybe even daycare. That's a big expense and that can really help out a young mother. But $5,000 a month? No, that's a full-time job worth of pay. Girl gave away a third of his yearly income in less than 10 months. That is twice as much as I'm making a month with a full-time job. That goes above and beyond helping with the necessities. That is bankrolling someone's entire life. I have a feeling that OP's ex-girlfriend is more worried about how she's going to explain to her sister that there are no more handouts coming than her relationship coming to an end. Maybe she is also worried about how her life is no longer filled with that meaningless paper and she will have to get a job while living with less. Seems like she got used to living that lifestyle and can't go back. I doubt she can rely on her sister to pay back the favor. A smaller joint account would have been good at this time, or more money in investments. She lost the golden goose, which is giving her more mercenary motives in the relationship. I genuinely think she's maybe a pushover, or can't say no type of person to be guilt-tripped. And like I said in another comment, it's easier to spend the money when it wasn't you who had to work for it. Lol, sure, money's just paper when you're not the one earning it. It must be nice to be so fast and loose with someone else's money. Glad he found everything out and dropped her. I luckily had this demonstrated to me when I was still young. A girl I met at uni, she lived for free in a nice house owned by her family friends, worked hospitality jobs, and would just move jobs when she got bored. We went out as friends every week, and I ended up paying for movies, coffees, etc. One day, we got into the topic of money and she said, "You care too much about money." I disagreed, and we went back and forth till I dropped the subject. The next time I saw her, she wanted to see a movie and I agreed. I paid for my ticket and stepped aside as the attendant asked her to pay for hers. She was stunned for a moment and had to dig through her bag for her card to pay. We didn't go out after that. Knew a girl at uni like that. Insanely naive, with the ability to just pay for anything she wanted to with a credit card her parents paid off in full. She heard me complaining that I was broke till payday and was utterly incredulous that I had to wait, that my parents just wouldn't give me money unless I was in real trouble, and that I politely turned down her offer to get me what I needed. She was trying to be kind, but it was just so scary how little she considered the cost of anything. I had a similar girl at work who asked why I took the bus instead of buying a car. I came to find out her parents paid for insurance, fuel, registration. She didn't even know what this was, and paid for half the initial sale price. No wonder she thought it was such a simple solution. Last story. Am I the a-hole for basically telling my brother that I don't blame his girlfriend for leaving him? My 32 female brother, 34, had been dating 32-year-old Jane for like 10 or 11 years. In the beginning, the whole family absolutely adored her, but over time, like maybe 3 years ago, Jane became kind of witchy and distant, and none of us understood why. She wouldn't answer us when we asked, so we admittedly kind of just avoided her honestly. She blocked everyone off everything, stopped going to family events, etc. I know I personally started really hating her for personal reasons, as the only person she ever acknowledged was my husband and she was flirty, and it didn't sit well with me. However, my brother shows up here completely tanked last night, saying Jane left him. During his visit, he started opening up on the why aspect and informed me that when Jane was like 23, she expressed wanting to get married and wanted to have babies and whatnot. Something none of us knew, as we thought they were child-free by choice, as that's what my brother told all of us. He said to me that he told her that if she loved him, she would wait until he got his stuff together. So she apparently waited around for years, just waiting on him, before he finally told her last week that he didn't want kids or to get married, and that he was comfortable with the life he has currently. So she left. He expressed that around the time that she started acting really bad to the rest of the family was because during that time I was pregnant and she couldn't stand being around me. He also very bluntly said she wanted your husband and talked about him all the time because she knew he wanted kids and I was holding out. And he had apparently been the reason she blocked all of us because of her comments about my husband. But looking back now, it makes a lot of sense. Anyways, at the end of the conversation, I said that I can understand why she left. I told him I understand him as well, and his reasoning behind not wanting kids or marriage. But if it was that important to her, I can totally see why she left. Especially where he made a promise of, when I get my stuff together, just to tell her years later that he basically lied and never wanted kids or marriage. So she probably feels like he wasted her time. I made a point to tell him I understood both sides, but he chalked this up to me agreeing with Jane and said that women shouldn't always stick together, you know. I'm your freaking family. And Jane left the love we had behind over potential kids and a piece of paper. That wasn't what I was trying to say, but regardless, my husband did tell me later on that I should have just not said what I said, regardless of how true it was. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. She wanted children, and he didn't, so she left. Frankly, he wasted a decade of her time. I feel bad for her. Not just wasted her time, but very possibly took away her opportunity to have kids at all. At 32, she's on a tight timeline to date around, meet someone great, and mutually decide to have kids together. Poor woman. Yeah, they had a fundamental incompatibility, and she left to pursue someone else. All in all, this was honestly the best outcome he could have expected to receive under the circumstances. And he should be grateful she respected him enough to just leave, instead of trying to force the relationship to proceed on her terms through duplicitous means like he did. Not a-hole, and I'm saying this as a married child-free guy. If one person wants kids and the other doesn't, they're fundamentally incompatible, and your brother wasted good years of his life by stringing this poor woman along. And not to trot out this line, but if he changes his mind and suddenly wants to have kids, he will always be able to do that. He could turn around at 45 or 50, hook up with a younger woman and have kids. There are men in their 70s who are fathers to newborns. Barring an accident or a disease, men will always have time. Women don't have that luxury. If you want kids, losing 10 years is a huge deal. Actually, men also don't have much time. The older a man gets, the more risk is there that the child won't be healthy or will have problems. Also, the women who will bear that embryo will also take health risk from that. So yeah, men and women have a biological clock. Not a-hole. Your brother knew he wasn't keen on marriage and kids. He knew Jane was. He intentionally led her on with lie suggestion he would want those things in the near future once his act was together. And when he figured he'd led her long enough that she would fall victim to sunk cost fallacy, he dropped the bomb that he would never be willing to give her the relationship and family of her goals. Your brother doesn't suck for not wanting those things, but he sucks so hard for leading Jane on, and then acting like he's the one with any right to be hurt. And your husband sucks for butting in, and suggesting you pretend to side with your a-hole brother just to keep some semblance of peace. Jane doesn't deserve that, even if you'll never see her again. Am I the a-hole for housing my daughter but not my stepdaughter? Plus updates. Original post. I'm a 48 male who inherited a beach house from my grandfather. The house has been in my family for generations, and it has a lot of sentimental value to me. I'm now with my long-term girlfriend for 7 years after a divorce from my first wife, which ended on good terms. She has a daughter from a previous marriage, and I have a daughter from my marriage as well. Our daughters are each 17, with mine being basically 3 months younger, and Kara, the oldest, will be 18 in May. Kara's been in my life for 7 years and we have a good relationship. However, she has an active father in her life, so I did not feel that role. I was in her life 50% of the time, so I have no doubt I played a large role in her life. But I wouldn't say father, but others do say a non-legal stepfather. I have my daughter Emmy half the time as well, aside from summers, where I had her more due to my and my ex's lifestyle. With that said, my ex and I have a good relationship, as does our daughter with all of us. Kara and Emmy have gotten along, and they are friendly. They have made plans independent of myself and my girlfriend, but they don't consider themselves sister or best friends. Now to the issue. Kara will be going to school near the beach house, and has asked if she can live in it to save the money, which would be significant. Emmy approached me and has said she wanted to live there after the summer, but wanted to live alone while also in school. The home is more than big enough for two, but she pointed out that they have very different lifestyles and would be far more comfortable alone or with a friend if I insisted she live with someone. It was a frank conversation, and she brought up the fact that the home will be hers one day, so it made sense. And she's right, the home will be hers by law in a few years, as I will pass it to her. My girlfriend and Kara are very upset and calling it favoritism and pointing out that she will already be set for life between having a free ride to school via scholarships and housing, while Kara will be using loans and may have to take a gap year or attend another school altogether. They are asking me to reconsider, and I think I've damaged my relationship. Am I the a-hole for this decision? I agree that is favoritism, but Emmy's my daughter, so of course I'm going to favor her, right? Now for the top comments before reading the updates. Not the a-hole. You're Kara's mom's boyfriend and not Kara's stepfather, seeing as you're not married. Kara's dad needs to step up and support her if money is an issue. Exactly, since it's mentioned that her bio dad is active in her life. Why not teach both kids how to be responsible and respectful adults? Charge them rent, albeit low since it will be daughters eventually. They learn valuable lessons. Stepdaughter will learn to respect roommates or get kicked out. Daughter will learn about paying bills and be responsible. What will the daughter do when she does get a house but doesn't learn financial responsibility? Will dad be paying for the property taxes and bills? And why is stepdaughter not approaching his daughter to talk about this? This is not even about charging rent. OP's daughter doesn't want to live with a stepdaughter, and certainly not for 3 years. And I see nothing wrong with that. Why isn't stepdaughter and girlfriend talking to his daughter? Maybe addressing any concerns she may have. Instead, they're going to her dad and asking him to force her to live with a stepdaughter? Not the whole. Here's why. Your daughter is a non-party kid. Stepdaughter is a party kid. You own a property, and who in their right mind would let a party kid live in a home way far away who won't be monitored? Drunk kids destroy property all the time, and it's you who will have to fix it. An apartment or anything else means the legal side of you messed it up, or you have to leave for destruction or noise issues are cut and dried, whereas with you, even with side stuff, means a longer, harder road. Also, having a party kid with non-party kid who is focused on school means the one with scholarships has to try and deal with keeping grades up and all extra commotion in-house. To me, it's not about your kid versus stepdaughter. It's about keeping property as is and not having the issues of destruction or other child from losing scholarships. Not only do drunk kids destroy property, they can result in legal issues, and legal issues can be huge. I agree. And in addition to property damage, what would happen to OP if party girl or her guests were injured on the property? And OP's daughter earned her scholarships, so they are not a free ride. That always gets me too. I went to college on scholarships. Even after you get them, you have to work your tail off to keep them. A scholarship is not a free ride. Not a whole. For 7 years, your daughter has been pleasant and friendly towards 2 people you brought into her life. Now, she is moving into the next phase of her life, and she would like less contact with them. That seems entirely reasonable. To force her into living with your girlfriend's daughter, especially when there's a lifestyle incompatibility, seems unfair and graceless. You and your girlfriend should be grateful your daughter has made things so easy in terms of the overlapping of your lives. It's absolutely not favoritism, which is an absolutely wild thing to say when Kara also has a living, breathing father with 50% custody. Now for the first update. I spoke to Emmy and her mom and let them know where I stood, and that was beside Emmy. But I also felt that Kara and her mom deserved a genuine conversation. The conversation was this past Friday. The talk started out okay. Obviously, there were some emotions, but I started the conversation with telling everyone there would be no yelling and tears would not be used to influence anyone. After it was all said, and we began, I just proposed the situation as, this is a second home that I own fully and outright. It will be Emmy's fully legally and in name in a few years. But as of today, it is mine. However, like the house, Emmy is mine and my responsibility. No one but us is entitled to it. And make no mistake, Emmy is indeed entitled to it. It may not be fair in your eyes, but it is what it is. Emmy, I can see why they may think it's selfish as the house can accommodate you both, but I will support whatever you want to do. This is not a discussion to change your mind, but to better understand it. It started pretty bluntly, from Kara and her mom saying they didn't understand why she didn't want her to live there as this would dictate a huge part of her future. The answer was half expected, and the other half hard for everyone to swallow. Emmy said she didn't trust Kara to actually focus on school and not make the home into a party house. She point-blank asked Kara if she could actually accept not having guests over. And Kara said something like, a few people 2 or 3 days a week wouldn't be a problem, when the answer should have been yes. Emmy said she wouldn't feel safe with her bringing over strange men whenever she wanted, and her dad would want to visit and she doesn't trust him at all. She said school was her main focus, and staying safe would be a worry if Kara was there. Kara and her mom got defensive, but I told them it didn't matter. She can't say she won't bring people over. Tells me all I need to know, and my daughter's safety is paramount, and Kara's focuses were blurred. Socializing is fine, but perhaps I was wrong and it had gotten out of hand. And I told my girlfriend that as her mother, she would have to address that, and that whatever the plan would be for Kara's schooling had she not ever met me, would have to be her course of action. As for Emmy, after the conversation, I told her she would have a roommate, as I felt it was important. She was okay with that, and asked if she could ask a friend. I told her yes, so all is good there. As everyone guessed, girlfriend is now ex-girlfriend. She asked me to stay somewhere else for a week, while she found somewhere to stay. But I reminded her that this was also my house and she was free to leave whenever. She ended up going to stay with a coworker, but something happened and she asked to come back, but I told her it wouldn't be wise. That's the update. Daughter is happy and I'm better than I thought I would be. Today's a new day. X will figure it out and Kara has time to learn and grow. Speaking of X figuring it out, did she get to learn how awful Reddit strangers were being about her daughter? Kara's probably already grown. Alert from this hopefully enough not to repeat her mother's mistakes. You stuck to your guns. And while I absolutely understand the safety aspect, which not the a-hole for this, I stand by my previous replies that Emmy's going to grow up to very controlling, /entitled, /selfish, going by how she put things with no visitors at all, rather than just no dodgy people. Just seriously don't take on another partner now until A, Emmy's living her own life, and B, you're actually in love. Because going by previews and especially your footnote here, you clearly weren't with your ex and wasted 7 years of her life, and you're the a-hole for this bit. I wish your ex and Kara all the best. They'll need it. Way to judge Emmy. Some people just want to focus on other things in life, and they don't owe anyone any explanations. Safety and security will always be a top priority in other people's life. What makes someone uncomfortable, as long as they are not stepping on others' rights, is fair. I'm trying to make a list of the things I would have done for free rent in college. Agree to not have friends over is way at the top. I stayed in the closet to graduate without debt. Right? Especially since there's a difference between never have any guests and have guests only on weekends and they can't be strangers and must be agreed upon ahead of time. It sounds like Emmy was willing to be reasonable as long as education was the focus, but a girlfriend's daughter saw it as a free party house. Her dad would want to visit and she doesn't trust him at all. It's odd to me that Opie glossed over this. Yeah, that alone would have me saying nope. I'm very glad Emmy isn't being put in that situation. Kara's response to Emmy's question really highlighted how incompatible they were going to be as roommates. It's good that she didn't pretend she would act otherwise, if she really had no intention to. But like if Kara had abided by Emmy's request for several months, she might have built her trust up to be able to have more company over time. Yeah, and that was what she thought would be a reasonable response in front of the parental units. Reality would have been much more often, with many more people. Emmy knows her way better than any of the 4 parents for sure. Good for Emmy. She's gonna go far. Now for the last update. To make a very long story short, this was not the full conclusion that I thought it would be. I'm not super familiar with Reddit, and I thought that update was deleted or not posted by the moderators. So Kara is now in jail. She was picked up in a stolen Kia by some friends, and they used the car to break into a pawn shop. I couldn't tell you what was stolen or how much was stolen, but some football cards were taken, and I guess they were worth more than a car and building damage. I understand people will say a lot about this, but I can honestly say she never did anything remotely like this. The worst thing I saw her do was break a dish on purpose when she was 13. As for my ex, well, she's living at a shelter now. She was not cheating on me, and I never thought she was. That was just people making leaps. Unfortunately, the woman she was living with asked her to join her and her husband for activities after moving in. She felt she had to do it for a place to live, and she regretted it. She told people at work and was terminated after refusing a transfer. My daughter and I are good, but mentally shook. If your intentions are pure, you don't lose people. They lose you. Never before have I seen this thought better illustrated. You didn't kick anyone out. You didn't end a relationship. You just communicated what was and was not acceptable for you, and the rest was on them. I'm kinda stunned about the audacity of the girlfriend telling Opie that he needed to move out of his house. She was going to try to keep the house, I bet. Getting her out once she was in the sole possession would have been a nightmare. It sounds like Kara's spiraling since the breakup. It must be hard knowing your mother lost her long-term relationship / common law marriage because of you. The girlfriend didn't need to torpedo her relationship because her kid wanted free rent. That much isn't Kara's fault. The ex-girlfriend and daughter could have had everything with Opie, and now have nothing because how entitled they were. I do think they were with Opie for the money, to be honest. So I was originally thinking it sucks that they were left so destitute. But then I was like, wait, WTF? They were living with Opie for 3 to 4 years. How ex-girlfriend could have been saving up, while OP presumably paid more for expenses. But reading between the lines, she probably didn't do that, and just spent all her money with the expectation of relying on OP for more. It's still crazy how fast they fell though. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not giving a wedding present I promised because I was uninvited? I-32 male was invited to a wedding of an acquaintance of mine named Molly a few months ago. I'm not super close to her or her fiancé, but I love weddings, so I said, yeah, I'll go. Now, the relevant part here is that I have a very good career and make an excellent living. Plus, I love giving gifts and splurging a bit. So I spoke with Molly and her fiancé and promised them a custom-made gaming PC since they game together. They were very happy and thanked me a lot. The price of the PC would come out to be a little over $1,500, not counting the monitor I was willing to throw in. Then 2 months ago, Molly told me that, unfortunately, I had to be uninvited to the wedding as part of a cost-cutting measure. She apologized, but assured me it was only because of cost. I was upset, but let it go. Then I found out a week or so later from a mutual acquaintance that was still going, that Molly told her she had to cut people because she needed the invites for some of the groom's family who decided to come. I was angry, so I decided not to give Molly the PC I promised. Molly's wedding happened 2 weeks ago, and from what I can tell, it was a nice ceremony. Afterward, she actually texted me, asking if we can talk about when the PC would arrive. I asked if we could call. She said yes, and I told her that since I didn't go to the wedding, that I wasn't going to get her a gift. We had a long argument, where she said I was being petty, and that I was holding it against her that I couldn't come, and that I made a promise. I didn't tell her what I knew because I wanted to protect the person who told me. She called me a petty a-hole and complained to our friend group. I explained to few select people the whole story and most agreed with me, but some said that weddings cause people to make tough decisions that aren't personal. So now I'm doubting myself. Maybe it wasn't personal and I'm just being petty. But she did lie to me and uninvited me while still expecting an expensive gift from me. So guys, am I the a-hole? Edit. Anyway, I just had to say that I didn't feel entitled to being invited over the groom's family. I just didn't appreciate being lied to. Had she told me why she needed to cancel, then I wouldn't have minded as much. I just don't understand the need for subterfuge. Also, I don't know anything about PC gaming. I'm a console gamer. I saw some people saying that PC was cheap, so I'll explain. I looked up a gaming PC from a site called Digital Storm. I gave them a model, they liked it, and I ordered it. Also, I don't plan to stop giving gifts, but I will probably scale back on the grandiosity. Hope that clears up stuff. Thank you all. Molly's delusional if she expects an acquaintance who was uninvited to still give a gift. Not the a-hole. There's honestly nothing else to say here. This is it. End of story. And a gift of that magnitude? Sheesh. That's the real reason she's angry. If she was expecting a small gift from OP, there would be no issue here. She realized she lost out on an awesome gift, and she's mad about it. I'm not sure how she didn't see that coming, to be honest. Like that should have been the expected outcome of uninviting someone. Not the a-hole. Wedding presents are commonly given by wedding guests and close family and friends. You weren't any of those things. And on that note, you aren't particularly close. So why did she invite you? Other than your generous reputation? Seems to me she tried to pull a fast one and failed. Well, we're a part of the same circles. We've gotten closer over the past year, and she invited some people from our friend group. I made the initial cut, I guess. Plus, I guess she did hear about my gift giving. I would never have the poor taste to uninvite a friend from an event and still expect a gift. If anything, she should be making it up to you. Update. Am I the a-hole for taking my children away from their grandparents after my husband died? Original post. I, 34 female, met my husband while I was doing an exchange semester in Australia when I was 20. We later got married and I moved to Australia permanently. We have 2 kids, 6 female and 4 male, and I'm now 4 months pregnant. My husband passed away 3 months ago. It was and still is horrible. With my husband not being here anymore, I want to move back to my home country. I think it will be good for my kids because the education system over there is heaps better, but the main reason is that I need my family. My 4-year-old doesn't really have an opinion on it, while my 6-year-old is excited because my parents have horses. Here in Australia, my husband's parents look after our kids Monday to Friday as my husband and I both had full-time jobs. So obviously they are close. Mother-in-law and father-in-law are very attached to the kids and love being grandparents. Last weekend, I broke the news to them. I didn't expect them to be happy, but I was hoping they'd understand. They didn't. It was ugly. They asked me how dare I take away their grandchildren after they lost their only son. They said my husband would be disappointed and he would want his children to grow up in Australia. I had to leave because I couldn't handle the situation. I feel guilty because my husband did want to stay in Australia, but mainly because that's where we settled. I don't think he'd be disappointed. I think he'd understand. But I feel so guilty but also angry. I feel like it was cruel of mother-in-law and father-in-law to say what they said. I plan to come back to Australia regularly because I don't want to deprive my children of their heritage, and it has become my home over the years. Basically, is it wrong to move back home? Now for the top comments before reading the update. No a-holes here. These situations just come up when a loved one dies. You need your family and they need theirs. I'm not going to call someone an a-hole for reacting adversely during their grief, and I'm not going to call someone an a-hole for wanting a support system. I completely agree with this. Just a sucky situation. Is there any way the grandparents could move too? If he's their only child, there wouldn't be other children keeping them in Australia. I don't think they can move. They only speak English. Immigration policy won't allow it, and they pretty much live off Centrelink. But they are welcome to visit and will visit too. What is your home country? That's a pretty messed up immigration policy. And people try and say America has a restrictive immigration policy. Switzerland. No a-holes here. Everyone is grieving now and all of you have valid emotions. They lost their son and now they're losing their grandchildren. You lost your husband and now you're alone in a foreign land. Family therapy is definitely needed here, but I don't think anyone is the a-hole. They're not losing their grandchildren. They're going to have a similar relationship to them as Opie's parents have had until now, as long as they come to their senses and apologize for the awful way they chose to treat Opie. Grandparents are not owed any relationship with grandchildren, especially not if they've lost that privilege with the sort of behavior they've displayed. Considering that the grandparents have been watching the children from Monday through Friday every day, to say that they are not owed a relationship is wrong. And legally, it is not true if the grandparents have been such a consistent and stable force in the kids' lives. The mother also doesn't seem overly concerned on how the kids will handle being removed from their grandparents who they see every day. No a-holes here. I hesitate to pass judgments because this is such a rough and hard situation for you as a parent. But I will say this. Please keep in mind that your children have been raised with your husband's parents as a constant fixture in their life. Your kids are too young to grasp what it means to be in Switzerland versus Australia and their grandparents, who have raised them almost as much as their parents, who they have seen nearly every day of their remembered lives, gone. Going from that consistent exposure to seeing them only a few times a year will not be a smooth transition, and you can't assume it will. Just because the 4-year-old doesn't understand what's going on, and the 6-year-old is excited because horses. You have to do what is best for your family, but rest assured your parents-in-law are not being a-holes. Your children will be devastated. There will be an adjustment period and it will not be easy. Now for the update. It's been nearly 3 weeks since my last post. A lot has happened since. First off, we're back home in Switzerland and the kids are okay. As planned, we moved in with my family. The kids are bonding with their grandparents and cousins and the animals. They're set up for therapy, as I am. The events leading up to this, I went back to my in-laws to explain my side of the story. I told them again that we would be coming back, but that right now I need to make sure that I can be a good mom to my kids. They were very understanding and asked if they could take the kids the next day. I agreed and dropped them off. However, pickup didn't go as planned. The kids weren't ready, and father-in-law told me that they decided it would be best for everyone if they stayed with them for a while, as I was clearly unstable. There was screaming, tears, threats, and lots of ugly things were said. I called my lawyer who told me to call the police. Luckily, it didn't came to that, and they gave me back the kids. But honestly, that was it for me. Trust gone. I booked flights for us and arranged what I could in such a limited time span. I told my in-laws that they had seriously hurt my trust and that I would need time to think what this means for the future. They were allowed to say goodbye to the kids in person. We arrived at home on Monday. The kids already video called my in-laws as I want to make it as easy as possible for them to transition. I am very hurt and disappointed that it had to end this way, but also hopeful for the future. Right now, I'm enjoying to get pampered by my mom who's very excited to be part of this pregnancy. In the future, I'll try and rekindle the relationship with my in-laws. Hey, as a fellow Swiss, I'm glad you made it back safely. I'm sorry about how it all played out, but it seems like you made a right choice. Thank you. Speaking as an Australian on welfare, you made a right choice. You now know what their plan was. To try and act as if you were mentally unstable and take your kids from you, possibly sticking you in a psych ward to cement their position. I'd be frank with them and say you don't plan on going back now until you get over their complete betrayal and trying to kidnap your children. That you had thought they were going to make it easy to keep the kids in their lives, but they made sure that is not going to be an easy thing. You're now surrounded by the people you can trust, and I suggest staying there and healing until you feel like you want to go back to Australia. I'm afraid you're right. I just feel bad for my kids. Kids are resilient. And as long as you monitor those calls so the in-laws don't try and manipulate them, you should be good. The kids probably love being in a new wonderful country. Will find it amazing and will be too busy learning the language and trying new things to miss Australia too much. I'm in Sydney, Australia, and with the quarantine only just lifting, it's not much fun here right now. You would have experienced this while still here, so they already had a separation from their friends. This is just extending it. They can still get online and catch up with them. Don't go back. They will try it again. You're probably right, unfortunately. My heart just breaks for the children as this means they probably won't see their grandparents again. I had a set of grandparents I very rarely saw because it wasn't safe for me to do so. I didn't understand when I was younger, but I do now. My mom always just explained to me in age-appropriate terms. Your children will understand, and if you're comfortable with them having regular video calls, etc., then there's no reason they can't develop a relationship that way. Now, for the last story, am I the a-hole for making a scene when I found out my sister put my niece up for adoption when she had her son? Plus updates. Original post. My sister had a second child and we were all thrilled for her. She lives a few states over and we haven't seen her this last year. She had one child 2 years ago with her boyfriend and the other one was born last month. Yesterday we had a family Zoom meeting to see the baby and to say hi to my other nibbling. We get on, family starts to load in. Everyone is basically there thrilled to see the baby. We get to meet her new baby boy. After a bit, I asked to see my niece as well. My sister got quiet and very quietly said she doesn't have her. My aunt questioned this, and I was also confused. After a few minutes, my sister said that in the beginning of January, she put her daughter up for a closed adoption because she couldn't care for 2 kids. Everyone lost it. The whole Zoom was a mess. We didn't know. We never got to say goodbye. She didn't have to do this because any of us would have taken my niece. Heck, I could have taken her. I've had multiple miscarriages/fertility issues, and although I am currently pregnant, I am stable, owning a home and have the resources to have taken a toddler, as well as have my baby. Important, my sister has always also said she wanted to be a boy mom. I lost it. I called my sister a narcissistic witch. I asked her when she'd get bored of the new baby and get rid of that one too. I asked her how the heck she could do this without reaching out to family. I know my sister, and I know deep down she just didn't want a daughter. She was depressed when she found out she was having a girl, but thrilled for this entire recent pregnancy. I called her a monster for making children she didn't want to care for, like they were a novelty. I said some other things too. At this point, my grandmother is a complete mess and says her chest hurts, so I stop. My aunt who is with my grandmother goes to help her and turns off the camera. My grandmother ended up having a panic attack that they thought was a heart attack at first. I am so glad she is okay. My sister has since cut off all contact from the entire family. My father is angry with me for blowing up. I was the only one who did, and says that I pushed her away. He said he could have tried to convince her to reverse it, but my verbal lashing completely ruined any chance of getting my niece back. I don't think he understands what a close adoption means. Also, adoption takes a minute. So for her to have it completed by January makes me feel this process was in place for a while. I don't think there's any chance of seeing my niece again when the mother and father both signed her to be adopted. He's mad at me because now he lost his granddaughter and is afraid he'll never know his grandson. My dad thinks I'm an A for freaking out and nearly giving my grandmother a heart attack. I'm feeling guilty that my grandmother had such an extreme reaction, but I feel that's more because she lost her great-granddaughter. Now for the top comments before reading the updates. Not the a-hole. For a moment I misread it and thought she put up the newest baby for adoption. which if she was worried about being able to support 2 children, I would have understood. Though with her knowing you are interested in adoption, I would have thought she was a little bit of an A. However, after realizing that instead, she adopted out her 2-year-old, I'm just utterly sickened and stunned. I have memories from being 2 years old, so this is a child who is aware enough to remember her parents and other family. This is a child who loved them unconditionally, who understood what love is. I'm just so sick at the thought of this. Apologies for jumping on the top comment, and I know this is very dark, but I think Opie needs to contact the police to check that the girl was in fact legally adopted by a family. I have trouble believing a social worker or any legit agency would allow this without question, /therapy/intervention, or even contacting family. My fear is that the sister did this under the table, to people who were not vetted or could be traffickers, or worse, like Kaylee Anthony was supposedly with a babysitter. A closed adoption sounds like a great excuse as to why no one will ever see Denise again and have no way of knowing it, checking up on if she was safe. Also, is the boyfriend okay? Or is it possible he's mistreating her and pushed her to do this? Honestly, that's my fear too. Was this child actually adopted out? Does the boyfriend know? I would also get someone else's verification. Not Day-Ho. I think this is one of the worst things I've ever seen on Reddit. I just can't get my head around it. Opie, I suspect your dad was taking it out on you because you were there and your sister wasn't. Unfair, but your dad is just as blindsided as you are, so hopefully can be forgiven for his extreme reaction. The only comfort I can think to take is that if your sister really didn't love her daughter, hopefully your niece has been placed with a family who will, and will have a better childhood as a result. But I'm so very sorry that wasn't with you. I'm honestly surprised that the authorities allowed a child to be ripped away from its wider family like this. It would be very traumatic. Did she lie and tell them there was no one willing to take the child or stay in its life? And if so, does that have any effect? I would speak to a family lawyer if I was you, even if it confirms that there is nothing that can be done. Unfortunately, no system would be able to intervene in this if the sister's story is correct. There's no authority able to be established by a CPS agency because it sounds like it was done through private adoption, not because of any involvement with the system, which would have offered much more protection for keeping the child placed with the family. Relative rights are unfortunately still pretty minimal, and parents have the right to do this without any family say, outside dependencies at least where practice. I work in the system and have seen some things, but I wholeheartedly agree this is one of the most heartbreaking things I've heard. That poor girl. Edit. Opie, I'd encourage you to also contact your local child welfare office no matter if this was done legally. To me, this indicates some possible untreated mental health concerns that she may need to support with to keep the youngest child safe. Even though CPS is stretched thin, I think this is one case that they should check up on and verify that the children, both girl and boy, are safe and okay. I mean, as dark as it is, for all the family knows they could have unalived the girl. Getting assurance that the girl is okay is absolutely within their rights. Maybe not CPS, but if they have the resources, a private investigator, or police even. This is such a wild thing. Opie needs to make sure the daughter is safe. Now for the first update. I've contacted local CPS for my sister's area, local courts, and I have a lawyer looking into it for me, starting tomorrow as I just obtain him. Thank you for the helpful comments pointing out the issues with this. Especially thank you to those in social work who reached out to me privately. I didn't realize how many options I had to fight this or see if it was legit. I'll update when I find more out from the lawyer. Lots of people commenting this is fake. I really wish it was. This has been a nightmare. Thank you again to those with helpful suggestions and feedback. Final update. I am pursuing legal custody, and due to this I will not be providing any more updates. My lawyer recommended this. The kids come first. But I can say a few things. They found her. The adoption process started a year ago in silence as a private rehoming. It was explained to me that we could fight it as they skipped steps in the process. My sister told them she had no family / the family she does have is harmful. There was mistreatment in our mother's side, but they are long dead now. There's an open investigation into my sister already for her son because of the way she surrendered custody of her daughter. I'm going to temporarily move into an apartment in that area, so I am close by in case CPS takes custody of my nephew. It was explained that this was the only way I could actively fight for custody, by being available and close. Update. I believe my parents resent me for starting my own family. Original post. I had somewhat of a revelation this weekend. I'm still processing how I feel about it and considering if I should confront my parents. Anyway, I, 40 male, came from a big family. I'm the second oldest of 9 kids. My older sister Jane is just a year older than me. There was a 6-year gap between me and the next sibling. Then my mom had a kid every 2 to 3 years. Since Jane and I were the oldest, we always helped with the little kids and the chores around the house. In fact, it was common for my parents and other adults to refer to us as Jane and Opie and the kids. It's like Jane and I were not considered children. It's more like we were 2 other adults living in the house. We were homeschooled, so we were home all the time. Part of my job is that I would wake up, make breakfast for the kids, then get them started with their school or activities before I started my own schoolwork. Jane would sleep in because she was more of a night owl, and it was her job to help at night with the baby because there was always a baby. Jane and I did most of the chores around the house. We took turns either cleaning the kitchen or doing the laundry, of which there was a lot. I did all the guy stuff, like mowing the yard and taking out the trash. As I got older, I would delegate some of these chores to my younger brothers, but it was still my responsibility to make sure it got done. Once I was old enough to drive, I would run errands and take the kids everywhere. I can't tell you how many times I would take the kids to things like playdates or doctor's appointments. I would often tuck the kids in bed and tell them stories. To me, these things were all just normal, but looking back on it, I was more like a second dad to the kids than a brother. Jane and I did have a lot of freedom as teenagers to go out with our friends if the chores were done. We didn't have cell phones back then. If we wanted to go out, we would just tell our parents we were going, and they didn't care, as long as we were back by the next morning. I moved out when I was 20, but I still spent a lot of time at my parents', and one of my younger siblings was almost always at my house. One brother, JJ, pretty much lived with me since he was 14 because he and our mom didn't get along. When JJ was 17, he got in a wreck and he called me instead of calling dad because I was just the one who handled those kinds of things. During all of this time, my parents always talked about how important it was for Jane and I to help with the kids because they were so busy with their ministry. I can't count how many times I had to drop what I was doing to take care of something because mom or dad were counseling someone. Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling. I hope I have painted an accurate picture of my childhood. Let's move on. I had not really dated much, but when I was 25, I met and started dating Anne. We fell in love fast and got married less than a year later. My younger siblings love Anne. She's a great cook and hostess. Our house became the hangout spot. My younger siblings even started calling her Mama Anne, something they still do to this day. We have now been married 15 years and have 2 kids of our own. My mom and Jane, though, did not like Anne. Jane and Anne get along okay now, but Anne and my mom do not have a good relationship. I never understood why, but I think I have finally figured out it's because they see it as Anne having taken me away. As Anne and I focused on our relationship and started a family, I spent less and less time doing things for my parents. My dad liked Anne at first, but over the past few years, their relationship has soured. Throughout the years, my dad has made comments to me about keeping up my responsibilities. One time he called me about one of the younger kids who had gotten in a fight with my mom and said, "You better get your brother and change his attitude. It's not okay how he treated your mom, and you were going to make him apologize." A few years ago, Anne and I set some boundaries with my parents, telling them we were not going to raise or discipline their kids. Our home is always open to my siblings, but we no longer let my parents try and use us to straighten them up. My parents have not taken this well. About a year ago, Anne injured her foot and couldn't walk for a while. Just as she was getting better, I was diagnosed with kidney disease, which then turned into kidney failure. I've had several surgeries with another one coming in a few weeks. It's been a rough year, and during this time, my parents have not only refused to help, they have actively made things harder for us. Things like promising to help with our kids but then canceling at the last minute, usually because something ministry-related came up. Then recently, my sister-in-law who lives in another state had a baby, and my mom has been staying with her and helping for the past 6 weeks. My sister-in-law has said that mom is a godsend and is so wonderful. My dad has gone to help every weekend. This hurts me because my mom wouldn't give us a single night to help with our youngest when he was born. Anyway, I'm sorry this post has turned out longer than I thought it would. I needed to get some of this off my chest. This weekend, I was talking to another sister and telling her how I don't understand why mom and dad don't treat me like they do the rest of the kids. Even Jane. It's like I'm not one of their children. And it just kind of hit me that they resent me for getting married and starting my own family and leaving them to raise their own kids. Part of me is relieved to finally realize why they treat me like they do, and part of me is sad. I'm kind of scared about this upcoming surgery, and I really wish I had a parent I could talk to about it. But I don't feel like I have parents, just some people that I co-parented my siblings with. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Your parents used religion as an excuse not to parent. Extremely bad parenting, and it was wrong expecting you to do the job they should have been doing. Your parents need a wake-up call about their selfishness. Hit them hard with what they have done wrong, then go no contact, as you don't need that kind of negativity in your life. That's hard to hear, but you might be right. Those selfish, horrible people who used and enslaved you do not deserve to have a relationship with you. How nice it would be if their congregation heard about how they treated you as a slave and now won't lift a finger to help you. How unchristian of them. You should write a book. Maybe your younger siblings can help you, where your own parents failed you. I had a friend in a family of 10 kids. They were very religious, but not homeschooling. I'm not even against homeschooling. It's just that a lot of parents don't follow through and just use the kids for errands at home. Anyway, the 2 oldest were the caretakers for the rest. The oldest left the family and they have cut her off. I think you are absolutely correct in assessing their view. I was the oldest of 9 in a homeschooling family, and I'm honestly surprised that Opie was just as much a caretaker as Jane. In many families like mine, and I knew a bunch of them, many even bigger than mine, the oldest male is a magical unicorn being who can do whatever he wants and be supported, while the oldest female deals with absurd expectations of living their lives as a martyr for the sake of their family's well-being. I don't wish the experience Opie described on anyone. However, the thing I noticed that surprised me is that, at least his parents were equally crappy to both Opie and Jane. I'm so sorry, Opie. It's also unfair. Your parents basically cranked out babies for you and Jane to raise, while they got to look pious with their ministry. But at least your siblings love and value you. You and Anne sound wonderful. Anne is the most amazing person ever. I love her so much. I think she is more of a mom to my siblings than our mom ever was. Now for the update. Thanks to everyone who engaged with my last post. It has been therapeutic. This post is a brief update and then I will answer some questions. So, I spoke with my wife Anne about it last night. I said something along the lines of, I've realized that my parents resent me for starting my own family and not helping them as much, and that is why they treat me so differently. And I think you've been trying to gently tell me this for years, but I was too dense to get it. We were sitting in the bed at a time, and she leaned over and patted me on the head and said, "You are so pretty." I laughed for like 10 minutes. It was a great emotional release. A lot of you said she sounds wonderful, and she really is. I just can't express how much I love her. About Jane, my older sister. Jane did get married and start a family about 2 years after I did. Jane and I had a falling out and didn't speak for several years, but we are okay now, just not very close. Our falling out was more about religion than anything. She is very religious like my parents, while I am not. I am religious and we attend church, but it's not our whole life like it is for my parents and Jane. Younger siblings. The youngest is 22, so they are all adults now. The second to the youngest passed away several years ago, so there are 8 of us now. I am very close with all of my younger siblings. They still come hang out at my house all the time, and they are all great aunts and uncles to my kids. All of them, including Jane, are upset with how my parents treated me this past year. Help with my kids. While I am disappointed in my parents for not helping, I do not need their help. Anne and I have close friends, plus we both have siblings that help. Anne's parents live far away, but they help when they can. We really are okay, and feel very blessed and loved with all the help we have received. Therapy. Part of my kidney treatment plan includes access to a therapist, and I love her. She has been great in helping me learn to live with an illness. I'm not sure if she is the right person to speak with about my parents, but I will ask her and see if she can refer someone if not. I will wait until after my surgery to bring this up, as I need to just focus on that right now. Setting boundaries. When I say my parents won't help, it's not that they say they won't help. It's that they offer to help, and then they either bail at the last minute or they change the plan so much that it causes Anne and I a lot of stress. A few months ago, Anne was sick and my mother offered to pick our kids up from school. It's a long story, but she kept changing things and making it very complicated, and my youngest ended up being left alone for a little while, and he got scared. After that, I had a harsh talk with my parents and told them how disappointed I was in them, and how I needed to focus on my health, and they were making things worse. I told them they are not allowed to take my kids anywhere, and they are not allowed to just drop by at my house, and in fact, they were not even allowed to offer to help. Because my mom doesn't take no for an answer and will nag until she wears me down. My parents were mad about this, but all 7 of my siblings took my side and rallied about me, and so my parents have respected that so far. Going no contact. A lot of people recommended going no contact, but I don't want that. I still love my parents, even though they have not been great parents. My kids love them too, and I don't want to take that away. They're good grandparents when they show up. I don't think my parents are awful people. I think they had this vision of how they wanted to have this big family and this big ministry, and I think they just didn't realize the responsibilities they put on Jane and I. I have spoken to them in the past and expressed how it was messed up that they put so much on us as kids, and they have apologized. Putting my parents on blast at their church. Several people recommended going to their church and telling people how they have treated me. You don't understand this church. They would praise my parents for putting God and the ministry above everything else. These super religious people are crazy. I guess that's it for now. My surgery is in less than 2 weeks, so I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to put this thing with my parents on the back burner, and later I will decide what, if anything, I'm going to do. Thanks again to everyone for your comments. It has really helped me work through some feelings. Make sure you have a will set up, and your wife is POA. And that in no way, if you pass after the surgery, that your parents can claim anything of yours, including access to your children. Great advice. We got a will a few years ago. Good. I'm sorry that you have to think about that, but at least you're prepared. I hope the surgery goes well and you feel better. Not a therapist myself, but rather integrated with someone dealing with issues. You may want to bring this up with her just to give her background information and get the referral process started. A simple, I know we don't have time to deal with this now, but some background information on me is ... Once we get to a slightly less busy time, I'd like to get a referral to someone appropriate for this issue. Knowing about these issues may impact how they deal with your current issues, and referrals can take forever to process. Okay, I will do that. I'm meeting with her on Monday. I will bring it up. Thanks. I'm going to say something you should repeat to your therapist. Having part-time good parents mean they were all the time bad parents. Now, just repeat that to your therapist and they will understand. Let me explain. If you're a parent, you don't get time off or get to turn it off just because it's inconvenient. Think about your own life. You have a serious illness. Have you ever slacked off in your care of your kids? Probably not. It might have changed how you did things, but you were still a good parent 99% of the time. 1% for times when we mess up. I hate to say this, but those good parent moments were nothing more than show. It's a form of gaslighting. Last story. My mom invoiced me and my sister for the expenses of raising us. Our household always revolved around money, even though my mom made more than enough money and we are not struggling by any means. She complained about every single thing she had to buy for us. Everything. Food, clothes, medical expenses, toys, laptops and phones, school costs, everything. We always knew exactly how much we were costing her, and we didn't dare ask for unnecessary things like leisure activities or expensive toys or hobby supplies. We started working very young, and she manipulated and guilted us to give her all the money we earned to pay off what we owed. When I turned 18, she completely cut me off financially, but kindly offered to let me rent my bedroom out for her and sent me an invoice of every cent I've ever cost her, totaling over $700,000. She billed me for Christmas and birthday presents. She even billed me for her medical expenses for the pregnancy and delivery, and wanted me to back pay rent to live in the house from birth. She did the same to my sister 2 years later when she turned 18. We were supposed to pay her back over time, starting the day we turned 18. Both of us were still dealing with a lot of internalized guilt from her constant manipulation, so we actually did pay for a while. Aside from necessary expenses, our entire paychecks were going to her. We rented our bedrooms in her house, and she separated her food, cleaning supplies, cookware and tableware etc. from ours, and charged us to use them. She generously included the use of the household appliances in our rent. It wasn't until I was 21 and my sister was 19 that enough people had told us this whole arrangement was unhinged that we finally snapped out of it. We moved out together and have stopped paying our mom or even contacting her at all. I'm glad you and your sister finally moved out. People like this amaze me. Why even have children? You didn't ask to be brought into this world. You owe her nothing. Did the mom have to pay back her mom, Opie's grandmother, for being erased? What kind of insane logic is this? Cripple your kids with debt from day dot is a surefire way to teach them good monetary skills later in life? Or just straight up so obsessed with money they charge everyone and anyone? Wait to set an example. Right, it seems she needs to be met with the same type of treatment. Speak to a lawyer and find out how much roughly you could sue her for damages to your mental health and emotional well-being. You did not ask to be born, nor did you ask for any presents or other things she bought. Go through the list and work out how much the therapy would be to put right the mental anguish she has caused you over the years. Find out what your state says she should provide you with for the 18 years, and find out where you stand exactly. Then present a united front to her with a parcel of documents for her to digest at her leisure. I would put money on the fact it could be over the $1 million mark. Watch her face fold and tell her to have a nice life. We will call it even. Every time she has said things like that, she has taken a toll on your health, and within the law, she could be made to pay. The last thing she would expect is that. I wish you both a lovely life the heck away from her negative crap. We don't have enough money to sue, and she knows that. She's a lawyer, so I can't imagine a world where we'd win this kind of lawsuit against her.